All right. Welcome to the Off the Rails Sports Podcast. I'll try and get my words straight here. Friday recap for what are we looking at? What's today? March 22nd. Trying to get my head out of my butt. Please be a little patient with me today. I guess the big story in sports is losing George Foreman. Truly one of the greatest characters in boxing. Two-time heavyweight champ. Was a force in the ring in his first iteration. The second time he came back, he was more considered a novelty. I remember when he came back because he needed the money. You know, he was a preacher in a Houston church, and he kept having to ask for money and donations, and he didn't want to do that anymore. I remember, I think his first fight back was in Sacramento, and he got $100,000, and the sports journalists were saying, you know, you can't make it back. You're too old. You're past 40. And he said, you know, you don't have to get in the ring. I do. I'm the guy, you know. And I'll never forget that night when he beat Michael Moore. And it was a case study in patience. He waited 10 rounds till he could get that shot in. And I remember watching it. I was in Kentucky with my friends, and my best friend at the time lived in Los Angeles, and I called him after, and I go, I can't believe it. You know, Michael Moore just walked into that punch, you know. Being a left-hander, it was, you know, you opened yourself up to that power from the right hand. But, and George just crumbled him. You know, I think Michael Moore could have got him out if he really, really went at him, but he gave him some breathing room, and George unloaded on him. George, in his first go-round, was a monster. It truly was, from the middle 60s to 1980, the greatest era ever in the heavyweight boxing. You had monsters on monsters who people didn't even know, like Cleveland Williams, Ron Lyle, Ernie Shavers. I mean, Ken Norton. I mean, Ken Norton got there. I mean, he beat Ali. Actually, I think he beat him twice. But, you know, you had, out of the top 20 heavyweights of all time, you probably had 8 or 9 just in that 15-year period. You know, you had Ali, you had Frazier, you had Foreman, like I said, Shavers, Ken Norton. You just had, you know, even guys like Jerry Quarry, man, those guys were monsters. If he would have came on in the middle 80s, Jerry Quarry would have been heavyweight champ of the world. You know, and I do think that Larry Holmes' era was definitely diminished because he came after the monsters. But let's go back to George. George was literally the scariest guy in the world. I don't know if you've seen the documentary When We Were Kings. It's about the fight with Ali and Zaire and how it was postponed, and then the tyrant who ruled the country wouldn't let him go because he figured they were never going to come back, and he was probably right. And in that documentary, you see Foreman's trainer holding, and I used to box, and I was a heavyweight. Yeah, I know, right? I'm not the 120 guy, right? And I used to use a 70-pound bag. And when you use a 70-pound bag, it's hard to hit. I mean, it's not hard to hit, but it's hard to move, you know. But you start getting it moving, and then it sways out, and then it comes back in, and you can really hurt your wrist. You can cause a lot of injuries because, you know, that 70 pounds has got a lot of inertia. And seeing videos of George Foreman with, I think he had a 90-pound, he had a bigger heavy bag, and his trainer holding on for dear life so it didn't move as much. And literally, it was like a polar bear's fist was imprinted on that heavy bag. And it was, watching George hit the heavy bag in that documentary was just awe-inspiring. I mean, I worked the heavy bag a couple thousand times in my 5-year career. You know, you did that every day. George was just an animal on an animal. I mean, and you saw his poor trainer just holding on for dear life, like, oh my God, and just getting rocked with these shots. And I don't know if George Foreman was the hardest hitter ever. I mean, a lot of guys say that. You know, I think Ernie Shavers probably was. But George had a huge mass. And if he would have fought Mike Tyson, he would have knocked Mike Tyson out. And I'm not saying he's a better fighter. Styles makes fights. And I remember when he fought Joe Frazier, everybody thought Joe was going to clean the floor with him. And George Foreman, after the fight, said, I gave him the meanest stare I could, so I was hoping he'd look me in the eye so he couldn't see my legs were shaking. Well, we know that's kind of not true, but you know, it's kind of a funny story, and that's what made George George. But he was just a mean hombre in that first go round. And what he did in Jamaica was legendary. The way he punched down, he punched Joe Frazier, who literally was as tough of a human being who's ever walked this earth. And he hit him so hard on his head that he pushed him into the ring flooring, and then he lifted up and he fell down. And that's when the legendary Howard Cosell comment of, down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier. And, you know, if he got a guy who was smaller than him, good luck. You just had no choice. You had to be at least his size. And I do remember when there's been 2 times in my life where I saw a guy get into the ring and you knew that guy didn't want to be there. One of them was Michael Spinks against Mike Tyson in Atlantic City. You could just see he didn't want to be there. Now, Michael Spinks, that dude's a man. That dude's a straight man, and I think, you know, history has really treated him poorly. He went in there, he knew he was in for it, and when he got knocked down that first time, he loaded up that right hand, and Tyson just slipped it, and then it was over. He went out on the shield. Mike Spinks is truly the most disrespected fighter of all time. But I digress. The other time is when Ken Norton got in the ring with George Foreman. And that guy, Ken Norton, was no wussy. That guy's a man. I mean, he got in the ring with, you know, with Ali a couple times. He was scared. He was literally scared, and Foreman just took him apart. Really, the only guy in that era who I don't think was scared of George Foreman was Ali. And we saw what happened in Zaire. And I'm going to miss George. He made this, you know, he was mean in the first act. He came back. We love you, George. We'll miss you. He was so great on the commentary for HBO. He's just amazing. He was a beautiful human being. He did a lot of good in this world, and he actually made his fortune on the George Foreman Grill, which was a pre-existing thing. He just put his name on it, and he was just the ultimate pitchman, you know? He was warm, gregarious. People loved him. They gravitated him. He became like that big teddy bear. And it's a shame to see all those gentlemen gone, you know? Ali, Frazier, Foreman. It's, you know, boxing is a brutal sport. I was never at their level. I was never even at the professional level. I just did Golden Gloves and boxed for 5 years. But there's a lot of self-discipline. There's a lot of loneliness. And there's a lot of insecurity. And George, you had a great career. You made a lot of people smile. You gave a lot of people a lot of great memories. We're going to miss you, buddy. And, you know, I was going to go into some other stuff, but you know what? I just want this to be a George Foreman tribute tonight. I got stories about my boxing, but they really don't seem appropriate now. Inside, I kind of want to cry. I hope George went in peace. I hope he wasn't in pain. His family didn't release much. And, you know, We'll love you, George. I hope wherever you are, you're not going to be down for the count. You're always going to be a 10 in my book. And I love you. I miss you. And I hope you're in a better place. All right. That's it for Off the Rails podcast for today. And I'll see you tomorrow with new updates on the final, on the March Madness and what's going on in golf. All right. Hit the like and subscribe button, like Scott tells me. And I will see you tomorrow.